if just like me, you never know what to read, well, good news is I've decided to start a little book club because I never know what to read. Literally, I have so many ideas, and every single time I write them down, but then either I don't feel like it because I already know the vibe and I'm like, this is not the emotion I'm going for. Or maybe I don't have the book and I'm like, honestly, I just don't want to buy it. And fun fact, most of the books that I own are the books that I found outside. That's a very Parisian thing. I love it about people. People just give their books away instead of throwing them. Thank God. Who would even throw a book? And we do have like little corners here and there in the city, and I have quite a few in my neighborhood. And I just come and pick the books up and also give the books away. So the book of the day is Charles Bukowski, Ham on Rye, and it is a very interesting book. I have a lot to say about it. So first of all, for the context, Charles Bukowski is an American writer. He lived between 1920s to 1990s. The book is a semi-autobiography, which is really cool because you know that a lot of it is true, but some parts might be exaggerated. He lived during the Great Depression. Oh my God, how much I do not like that time because it really reflects his life, and the whole book evolves around how the socio-economic struggle and how hard it was for people to make the ends meet. Overall, the time was marked by high levels of unemployment and high levels of inflation. Does it ring a bell? 2026? Exactly. And if at the beginning when I started to read the book, I quite frankly hated, by the end of the book, I just looked at my life and said, but how much different is it from the life that people lived back then? As I said, I have very, very shared opinions on the book. It is a very, very violent book, and I'm talking, you're gonna find absolutely everything. Domestic violence, children violence, like towards each other, animal violence, incest, all kind of things, all in one book. And obviously today it is shocking to read those things. I don't even know if some of those things would be published as of today. But we're talking about somebody who was born in the 1920s. So when you look back at the historical background, you're like, I do not agree, but let's say I do understand. The first thing that was really shocking to me is how ignored the kids were, because supposedly it's an autobiography, so he starts writing it as he's still a child. Kids were basically left to fend for themselves, which would only mean one thing, given that most of the parents were already struggling financially and unemployed. How would it reflect the kids? Kids would be angry as hell because there was very high levels of domestic violence. So he literally describes himself being beaten up several times a week, starting from like the age of 6 to 12 to 13 or something. How do you think this young man is going to feel about the world? Well, he is just only going to keep all that violence within himself and throw it onto the world. And that's exactly what he did. And that's exactly why it's so hard to read that book. Because all you read about is him punching other kids, him being punched, him actually involving himself into fights continuously, because when you have that much anger in you, well, you gotta do something with it. And you know, therapy was not quite an option back then. Should I even mention the misogyny in the book? I do not think so. Once again, let me just remind you that Charles Bukowski was born in 1920. And to be honest, that was not even the most shocking part. Let's say this is something that I expected. It's a young man. He was raised by misogynists. He lives in a misogynistic society. He is going to be one of them. It is just the overall context of violence where you really, the more you read it, the more you understand that when you grow up like that, when you grow up poor with parents who are always struggling and who backlash at you all the time, who beat you up, what kind of person do you think you're going to be? Do you think you're going to be successful, financially thriving, good at relationships? Very obviously none of that. And this is exactly how his character was. He was very socially awkward, very isolated, and you could actually see glimpses of him like trying to fit in and trying to understand what it is fitting in, what it's like having friends, what it would feel like having a girlfriend, and none of them ever works out for him. And to be honest, partially I can actually relate to him, because how can you be not mad at the world and not bitter when there's so much violence around you? I've been through a lot myself in life, and some of the things that he went through too, like poverty, unemployment, social isolation. And honestly, I get him. I get him, however violent he was. I'm not saying that I approve it in any how, obviously, and neither am I doing it myself. But I really get the depth of his character, and I see exactly where he comes from, why he's so mad at life. And if you think about it, if you're so mad at life because life just fails you, you don't have any means, you don't have any future, and you kind of know that, and it's tangible, you can understand that. I feel like it creates two types of people. The first part is people who are deeply depressed and who just basically shut down. And the second part, or the second type of people, is people who become very resentful, very bitter, and very angry. And if you think from a, let's call it, psychological point of view, I would argue that the second type is better for themselves, because when you're still bitter and angry, you're still fighting, you still want that life, you still want that future, you don't know that if you're gonna ever have it, but there's still a little bit of hope in you that actually makes you fight. While when you are on the depressed side, well, you basically giving up on your life. So once again, I kind of get his character. He literally has no friends. He has no supporting family. He would love to have a girlfriend because he's a young man. He doesn't know how to do it, but instead he buries himself into reading books and just spends his whole life at the library, which I personally love. I think books are the best escape ever possible. And it's actually really cool to see a young man who comes from basically nowhere read really famous authors that I personally studied at school, and you go like, wow, you might not be smart, let's say, because you didn't get the education that most people do these days, but you are smart because there's still this part in you that's like consciously looking for something higher, something better. And this is what reading gives to you. This is what's so magical about it. You can live somebody's life through one single book without actually experiencing it. And that's pretty much the only thing, especially back in the days, that were left to kids, that were left to struggling kids. What else would you do? They did not have video games. It's literally like, okay, I have an escape plan, and my escape plan is actually reading somebody else's book and seeing how they loved somebody, how they traveled to all those beautiful places, how they had that career of their dreams, and it makes me feel better about myself. On top of that, something that really killed me in the book is that's what happened in real life to Charles Bukowski. He had a horrible acne when he was a teenager, and he couldn't find any good doctors to treat him. And at one point, he even dropped out of school to just stay home. And guess who else had a horrible acne when she was a teenager? And that's me. And I still have lots of scars. I don't know if you could see them. Let's say you do. Oh, actually, I look good in that light. But yeah, I do have a lot of scars, and taking care of them, but it takes a lot of money. So send the money if you want me to have a perfect face. And I just know how it feels. I just know how desperate he feels. Like, you know that feeling when you went through the same experience and you just reading a book of somebody you never knew, somebody who's not even alive anymore, and you know exactly how they felt at that precise moment. And I know because I've been there. My acne was so bad that for around a year, I would literally refuse to leave my house. That it was so bad. I think I was 14, 15, that at one point you start having suicidal thoughts. And I'm not saying like actively suicidal, more on the I don't want to live suicidal type. And whatever you try to do, whatever type of doctors you try to see, it's just not working. And to this day, I still don't understand why I couldn't find any decent doctors, because I was not born in 1920, but still I feel like it's a little bit better today, but when I was a teenager, it was still not as researched, not as understood. And you're that young human, you're 14, 15, 16. That's the time where you're supposed to bloom. As a young person, that's when you look at the mirror and say, hey, my body's changing. I'm looking better. I got some muscle, my skin is cute, I like myself, I'm so good looking, and that's when you start to gain confidence. So by that time, both me and him, our confidence started to drop dramatically. And obviously, when you have horrible acne, there's a lot of bullying, especially for him, because who knew anything about acne in 1930s or something? He isolates himself even more, drops out of school, spends a lot of time with nurses trying to do something to his skin, and supposedly keeps his scars for life. So Oh God, I just know how bad it is. If you ever have kids and they start to have acne, I swear to God, please just take them to a dermatologist straight away, put them on Accutane, and just like don't even overthink it, just do something for them. Because it's something that sounds small, but it's something that could literally destroy your whole life, and the confidence that you were supposed to build as this young person, it's just gone. And me personally, it took me years to rebuild that confidence, because I remember when I was, let's say, 19, I would literally cover my whole face with foundation, and not a good shade, not a good match, nothing like that, but it was literally the only thing that made me feel okay with my skin. And still to this day, I love to use filters. I think using filters when you're grown up is an okay thing, because you know it's an imaginary. Maybe when you're a teenager you should be careful, but gosh, it's just, you look at your skin like, damn, this is how I want to look. This is the type of person I want to be. I can relate to him 100%. Most interesting part of the book, I would say, is his monologues, because pretty much the whole book is a monologue. He just talks to himself and occasionally talks to some other people. I really love the way he talks about pain and enduring it, and I love the notion of undeserved pain, because he describes a lot of his beatings, like when his own dad would beat him like several times a week, and I'm talking badly. And this one part that I really want to read too, because it's just, I know exactly how it feels, and I think many of you can understand too. I had no interest. I had no interest in anything. I had no idea how I was going to escape. At least the others had some taste for life. They seemed to understand something that I didn't understand. Maybe I was lacking. It was possible. I often felt inferior. I just wanted to get away from them, but there was no place to go. Suicide? Jesus Christ, just more work. I felt like sleeping for 5 years, but they wouldn't let me. What can I say? That's why I keep comparing the Great Depression to these days, because so many people that I know, including myself, are unemployed and struggling financially. Inflation is so high that when I look back at my life, or like 7 years ago, I feel like literally nothing changed, even though professionally I'm supposed to do better. I'm supposed to be making more money, but everything is just more and more expensive, and it also isolates people so much, because instead of going out and seeing your friends and travel and discovering the world, all those cute things that money actually offers you, you're just stuck home, struggling, not knowing what to do with your life, looking for a job, knowing that you have a damn degree and not finding anything. And you're just so mad and pissed in the world, because you're like, you promised me that if I did this, if I went to school, and then if I went to college and I graduated and I got a couple of years of experience, I would be able to climb that social ladder, and I would be able to make more money and get an apartment. And then when all those things kind of settle down, I can actually get a partner, and maybe we could start a family. And so many things like this today, like basic human needs, are not available to people. So many people are not having kids today because they cannot afford it. So many people don't travel because they can't afford it. They don't get a better living situation, none of that. And that's exactly who he was. And on top of that, the social isolation that he went through, he doesn't understand how other people function. And also, something that I really loved about the book is, at one point, his father, who dreamt about getting rich, sends him to a school with mostly rich kids. You would think that that's a good thing, so maybe finally you could make some connection and understand how world works on the other side, meaning the country of the poverty. And in reality, it just isolated him even more, because he could see all of those kids having a chance at life, having a better, brighter future, not having to drive a bike to school, but instead get in a car at 16. It just, once again, it makes you even smaller. The small scraps that you have left of your self-esteem is just crushing them even more. Something I also really like is when he describes those rich kids obviously doing way better in life. He says, I said to myself again, someday I will be as happy as any of you will see. And this is also something that I honestly can relate so much, because I grew up poor, and to that day, unfortunately, I'm not doing that great financially. I just know what it's like to watch other people who have more means and who come from wealthier families actually enjoy their life and get to do things that they want. Because if they want to get a new hobby, they can just go out in the world and get the new hobby. If they want to visit a country, they can do it. Whatever they want to do, those things are more easily available to them automatically, just because you were born in the so-called right family. You have that rage in you like, okay, but I will make it. I'm sure I'll make it, and then I'll show you how happy I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be even happier than any of you bastards aware. And this is like, that's exactly how he feels. And 2026 is the new Great Depression. I'm telling you, I don't know, things need to switch up at some point, because it's just like, I know so many people, and I also see so many people on social media who literally cannot make it at the end of the month. Today I watched a TikTok of a lady who said that past year she lost 28 pounds, not because she wanted to, but because she can no longer afford groceries, and she's in her 50s. That guy lived between 90-20 to 90-90. Once again, what the hell is going on? Also, let's go back to the unemployment, because at one point he says, but it was true. It was also true that some companies put ads in the papers every day when there were no jobs available. Well, guess what? All of the fake jobs that they post today on LinkedIn, on Indeed, and Welcome to the Jungle, because it's very popular in Europe. And I see the same companies put up the same jobs all over throughout month. And sometimes I've seen them for like a couple of years, and you just know that these are fake jobs. And just as it happened for him, because his family would say it all over again, your parents go like, well, maybe you should just call the company, or maybe you should just knock on the door. And he literally tells them, like, it doesn't work like that. And why 1 century later we are experiencing the exact same problems? First of all, lack of understanding. Like, if somebody is struggling and unemployed, that there's a reason for that. The job market's bad. Why is the job market that bad? Yeah. What I really liked about the book is you see that he's angry because he wants to live. He has so much desire to live in him. He really, he earns for it. He has absolutely no idea how. He doesn't have much hope. He would love to, but he's just struggling so much. And once again, I just relate to him. I hate him with all my heart, because he was so angry and he was so unpleasant to be around, and it's literally the last person you ever want to be friends with. But at the same time, on a more human level, I literally understand him now that I have the context to your life. Honestly, how can I even judge you too much? I'm like, how would I feel if I were you? Because I'm not saying I'm in a similar situation. Hey, it's still 1 century later. I still have more exes. I still have a degree, something that he probably couldn't have done. Or I think he actually did get a degree, but maybe not as serious as college studies are today. But I get you. I get you. I get why you're so angry. I get why you're trying so hard. I get why you are so violent. I get why you're drinking so much, because you literally just want to drown your sorrow. And also, one really cool thing about this book, it's an easy read. It's not easy mentally, but it just flows because of the language that he uses, because it's very quick, because he is just talking to himself. So its sentences tend to be very short. It didn't take me much time to finish the book. It's not a huge book, but still, something just still kept me on the edge, because I kept complaining about the book the whole time, because it was so much violence. And then my partner would just say, look, quit the book. Why are you reading them? I'm like, no. It's just something that keeps me on the edge. I want to know what's going to happen next. I wouldn't say that much happens in the book. And it's not about the events that happen. It's literally about his perspective on himself, on the people, on the world, that make it so interesting and also so hard to read. Would I recommend that book? I honestly don't know, because I think you gotta have a tough mental health to handle some passages, because there's just so much casual violence that he grew up with and he did not agree with, but you kind of have to give in at some point if you just don't want to go mad. And as I said, the Great Depression times feel exactly like 2026 feels, because also that's when the World War II started. So at one point he is talking about Hitler, and you're like, look outside, 2026, what is going on? A lot of similar things. And are we going through something similar? Is that the life that we condemn to live? Is that how a lot of people gonna live? I really don't want to think about that. So next book that I'm picking is gonna be a nicer book, like something joyful. So if anybody has any recommendations of a book that is more joyous but also a good read, I'm more than willing to take it. And in the meantime, if you want to read Charles Bukowski, you go ahead. I don't want to rate it. I'm not sure if I want to recommend it. A part of me still appreciated it, but it was the last Charles Bukowski book that I was gonna read.